And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Dave. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, Dave. How are you?
Pretty good. We were saying before going live, we got the best name, right? We got the best name. Who named you, and who'd they name you after? Grandpa Dave, or?
No, it's kind of there is a funny story there, and that I was raised in a family of six boys, no girls. My father, when he was born, was very sickly. They did not expect him to live, and so they named him after an uncle, Percy.
Huh?
So my father was named Percy. He hated it, and then when he had his own children, he said, "I'm going to pick the plainest, most vanilla name. So it's Dick, John, Dave, Tom, Jim, Bob."
Wow, and they're all one syllable.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Easy
right.
to do. Roll
He was
call at
serious about
dinner.
it.
Roll call at dinner was pretty fast, I guess.
Yes, it was.
So no estrogen in your siblings, but does that mean you did a lot of rough housing, wrestling, and
Oh,
fighting?
you can't imagine. Sure,
That's cool.
sure. Yeah, and sports like six boys. I mean, sports was everything we talked about and lived and did. It was our life. Yeah,
Cool. Very cool. Well, I'm
yeah.
going to get you to paint a little picture of the faith journey. I don't know exactly where you're at today, but I always ask
Mm,
my guests to go right back to early childhood, first impressions about God, religion, or if there was no God and
yeah,
religion in the home, then at least
sure.
philosophy, worldview, and all the
Yeah.
twists and turns in your journey up until today. What kind of journey did you have?
Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna end up someplace where it might be unusual, but so family of six boys, Catholic, raised Catholic, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
mm,
and I was third of the six. I was always sort of an independent thinker, and so as a teenager, high school, I left the Catholic church and all of that, even though I was
mm.
in a Catholic high school,
You got
and
confirmed first? You got confirmation first?
yes,
Okay.
like when we were in elementary school, I think we did that.
Oh, okay.
And then as a young adult, I was a seeker, looking for what I knew was out there. And I went, I did Zen and Buddha, and
Uh-huh.
I honestly I dug deeply into it because nothing was very superficial. It was a deep dive into all of those, and I found them all wanting. And then I came across a book. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it's called The Late Great Planet Earth, and it
Ah,
was
yes.
yeah. It was a big thing at the time, and it's a book about the last days based on the book of Revelation,
Mm.
and it scared me to death, honestly. And I thought, whoa. And so I looked around, found somebody who had some knowledge of the Bible, and I said, I want to study the Bible, and I did. And then at age 24, I gave my life to Christ, became a Christian, was baptized, and started my Christian journey. And at first, I was very much involved in what I now call the institutional church system. But then I
Mm.
just saw it as what you did, and I was very involved, taught Sunday school class, and my wife and I did short-term mission trips, and I became an elder. I preached from the pulpit, 100 times, and all of that. But I began to be disillusioned with the system, the institutional church system, and eventually found myself in a house church.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And for maybe 7 or 8 years, we had a house church, met in our house, and there was an organization called Open Church Ministries, which at that time they were a national organization that promoted house churches. And so I became
Ah.
the Michigan guy, all volunteer, but the Michigan guy because we were
Mm.
living in Michigan, and we drove around the state whenever anybody showed any interest, and went up to see them and talked to them about starting a house church and how you do it and so on.
Mm.
And then what happened in my business? So I began my business began to take off. And I was a public speaker and consultant and author, and it got to the point where I couldn't be there to facilitate the house church meetings, and nobody else wanted to, so it just faded away. And
Mm.
so then we went for quite a while not associated with anything, and have come to the position right now. Honestly, I have not been in church doors for years, and I'm very content. I'm closer to the Lord than I ever have been. I I'm comfortable and confident in my relationship with God, and I just think that again, what I call the institutional church system is one of the biggest problems around. So, so I am. There's a word for guys like me. It's called done, D-O-N-E, done Christians. They're people who are committed Christians, but they're done with the trappings of churches and all that sort of stuff. So
Wow.
that's where I am.
Very
Yeah.
cool. How big is the community? Is it a tight-knit community of
No,
Doug?
not at all. Not at all. There, there's some websites out there and blog posts and so on like that. I honestly have probably met a couple people like that, but I wouldn't say I have any close relationships with any. Yeah.
What about your wife?
She's with it. She's with me. She's a
She's
done
done.
as well. Yeah. Yeah.
She followed the lead,
And
she followed the
yeah,
lead, or
yeah. And she was raised as a Catholic as well.
no way?
And,
What's
yeah,
with all
yeah.
these Catholics?
I don't know.
What state were you raised in again?
Both of us I was raised in Ohio, in Toledo,
Oh,
and she was raised in Dearborn, Michigan.
yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of Catholics in Ohio. I know that.
Yes.
Michigan, I'm not sure, but I do know a guy in Michigan. He's Catholic. I've been to Sault Ste. Marie. Is that in Michigan? Sault Ste. Marie.
Yep. Sault Ste. Marie, way
There's
up
a Canadian.
there.
There's a Canadian side to the city and
Yes.
an American side to the city.
Yeah.
Went tree planting way up north. So one of my big things that I talk about on my podcast is church. What is church? And a lot of my favorite subscribers and guests and friends that I've met on the podcast are Protestant, for lack of a better term. No offense intended. Protestant just meaning non-Catholic. Not Orthodox,
Yeah.
not Catholic.
Right.
So I basically break Christians down into like Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, and then Protestants. But that's just a rough 3-part division. I know there's a lot of nuance in every one of those camps. Okay, so
Sure.
but it's just a quick and dirty way of saying it. But a lot of my friends I made on the podcast are Protestant, and one of them in particular is always asking, what is church and how can we do church? How did the apostles do church? So what would you say to him if he happens to tune into this episode? What answer would you give? And I've asked this to many Protestants, so it's interesting to hear the different answers. What is church, and how should we do church, and how do we get a sense of community where we're actually involved in other people's lives? Because it sounds like you're not. It sounds like you're disconnected, and that's not what this guy's looking for.
Right. So there's like 3 or 4 questions here. Let me start with the first one. So church, the biblical understanding of church is the universal body of all Christians. That's church.
That's the big C church. The big C church, like the
big C. Yep. And and God adds to that church those who He chooses. Via Acts 2:38. So. There's that, and then there is the local expression, which is in the New Testament primarily house churches, where people gather together in someone's home, and they gather not to worship, but they gather to build one another up, and that's pretty clear in the New Testament. Is we're to gather together to help each other, to build each other up.
Did they worship in the Jewish temple, or where did they synagogue, or where did they worship?
In the New Testament?
Yeah.
No, in people's homes. I mean, just
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
They stopped going. They stopped going to the Jewish places. They would only go there to proselytize or to preach Jesus. Is that...
I suppose, and I'm sure there was some spillover because the original Christians were Jews. And so it was such a cultural thing. I'm sure that they continued to some degree, but as the church spread into in places outside of Jerusalem, you found them in people's homes, and there's several references to the church that meets in your home, and churches in homes, and so the original expression, the early expression of the church local, was a home church, was people gathered together. And there is in 1 Corinthians 14, there's a very specific command. When you meet together, do this, and it says, bring something to share and edify with one another. And it's a very specific command about how you meet together. You don't meet together to go listen to somebody. You don't meet together to sing songs. You meet together to help one another. Very specific. I mean, it's a command. So that was and that's the idea, I think, behind the house church, is that it's the closest thing to the New Testament example that you're going to find. So back to your question, that's church. Churches with a big C, church little c, meeting, small groups meeting together wherever they are. Now, while I don't go to a house church these days, I do have a small group that
Oh,
we
okay.
meet. I mean, we meet together once a month. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I don't, and it's interesting. We meet via Zoom, and there are people from all over North America. So I have people. I don't have any from Montreal, but I got two people from Toronto area, and
Oh,
one
yeah.
from Vancouver, and
Uh,
Texas, and so on.
oh, yeah.
We meet together in a very formal agenda once a month. Yeah,
Oh, where do you meet? A cafe?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, what I tell those guys is, of course, we've been together for some time, and people come and go, but there is a degree of vulnerability and transparency and sharing together that you're just not going to see
Yeah.
very regularly. It's
Yeah.
highly unusual,
Yeah.
and we do. I mean, we meet together to help each other get through, and help each other build. It's a business group, so we help each other build businesses.
Oh,
We
okay.
help each other grow spiritually and deal with whatever comes up. We have a thing we call PICS.
Okay.
A PIC is an acronym. It stands for problem, issue, idea, or question. In other words, you can bring anything in that you want the group to talk about. You can bring it in, and we will. And we get things from, should I fire this guy? Should I? My oldest son just got arrested. My wife filed for divorce. I mean, we deal with everything. And I tell them, this is the closest thing you will probably ever have to church the way it was done in the New Testament days. This is it. This is as close you're going to get because of our degree of care for one another and the degree to which we're involved in each other's lives.
Yeah, well, that's what my friend, his name's Christopher Rice. That's what
Mhm.
he's always looking for, that involvement, the real deep involvement, not just a
Yeah.
superficial like nod to the guy in the pew and then go on your merry way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that.
Right. Right.
That's what I get from my Catholic community here. I could get more involved if I wanted to. Like I mean, I could go out of my way and try to push things so I get involved. But
Hmm.
I'm busy and I got to take care of my wife and everything, and it's just like
Sure. Sure.
she hates the Catholic Church with a passion.
Yeah.
So it's like I gotta moderate my involvement. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
mean, the house would be full of homeless people and just a ragtag crew. That's sort of my impulse would be to reach out to the poor. But
Hmm.
she doesn't want that, so I
Mm.
gotta respect
Yeah.
her wishes.
Okay. Yeah.
My friend Altoid PA, whatever that means. I see him in the live chat now, and my friend Pudusbird is here. And Altoid PA says Dave stated that he is closer to the Lord now than he ever was. Can he elaborate
Hmm.
on how he knows that, or
Mm.
examples of what he means? So yeah, what do you
Yeah.
mean? How do you know that you're closer to the Lord? What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a great question. I would say, as you grow and mature in your faith, you grow and mature in a relationship with God. I mean, that's
The goal.
that's the function of faith, is to bring you into
Yeah,
relationship with God.
yeah,
And the way you know that, as you grow, is you communicate. And he communicates with you, and you communicate with him in a deeper level than perhaps you have in the past. And you grow. It's a journey, so you're continually growing. So I would say that I don't hear his voice in so many words, but I do. He communicates through thoughts
yeah.
with me, and in a prayer, I'll receive thoughts from him,
Inspirations,
and
like.
I'll test it, and say, yeah, this is from him. And I just feel very close. I feel closer than I ever have, and it's because he has been involved in my life this whole time. And we always see these things more clearly in retrospect, and clearly I see how he's been involved in my life just intimately for a long time, and I thank him for that, and we communicate. So I guess that's, and I realize that there's a degree of subjectiveness to that, but but it is what it is, And I think if you probably would have asked that question, or if you do ask that question of others who I would characterize, let's say, mature people in the Lord, I think they'll probably come up with a very similar answer.
Yeah.
So, well, it's subjective. It is a shared experience, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like your marriage with your wife and my marriage with my wife, we have a lot
Yes.
in common, but they're different women. They really are different women.
Yes.
Especially
Right.
mine. Mine's especially different. But anyway, enough about that. But we're made for each other. We're definitely made for each other. I'm sure you two are
Yeah.
too. You're happily married now?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. We've been married 43 years come July.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I'm thinking about the Trinity now. There's a dogma of the Catholic Church that whatever the persons of the Trinity do add
Hmm.
extra outside of the inner life, the interior life of the Godhead, everything they
Hmm.
do outside of that, like in creation and so on and so forth, all three do together. So
Hmm.
we have also, to counterbalance that, we have this idea of attribution. So we attribute to the Father certain things like creation, we
Hmm.
attribute to
Hmm.
the Son certain things, and
Hmm.
we attribute to the Spirit certain things. But that's just an attribution because of our limited nature and how we understand things. But we also know that behind the scenes, God's acting all three persons of the Trinity in everything that's happening ad
Hmm.
extra. So I'm just wondering, when it comes to prayer life, I'm very much emphasizing God the Father, very
Hmm.
much, very much.
Hmm. Hmm.
My second emphasis is Jesus Christ, and then the Holy Spirit's kind of like once in a while I remember, oh yeah, there's the Holy Spirit too. So I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wondering if you and Christians that you know have their favorite favorite persons of the Godhead, and it's kind of like maybe a good emphasis or a misplaced emphasis, maybe a little bit of neglect for the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Just talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for other Christians, but I can speak for myself, and that is, I think, to a fault, I address the Father, and when I say to a fault, I feel from time to time I really should be talking to Christ,
Yeah.
and I really should be more aware of His presence. Clearly, I mean, it's a fault that I'm not, and and you're right. I don't think much about the Holy Spirit. So yeah, I would say I'm almost a mirror image of you, David,
All
in that
Daves think like this. This is the Dave way.
really. Maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah.
I wonder what King
Just
David
as
did.
just go ahead.
I wonder what King David did. He was all about the Father too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
You were gonna say that?
I as an aside, I will say this. So the people in my group, and we have I use an acronym, CBIG. CBIG stands for Christian Business Impact Group. That's the group of people I was talking about. I have never ever asked them
Ah,
uh, what church they go to.
why not?
It's
There might be
totally
some Catholics in
irrelevant.
there.
Could be, could
Ooh,
be. I mean,
I doubt
from
it,
my
but maybe.
perspective, it's totally irrelevant. I believe the institutional church is irrelevant. Matter of fact, I have a book. It's called "Is the Institutional Church Really the Church?" And I'll put a plug in here. Go buy it. Your eyes will be open. You will see things you've never really thought about before.
I put a plug for you, DaveKahle.com. How do you pronounce Kahle, and what's the origin of that?
Like the big fish that swims in the sea, kale whale.
Oh,
So
okay.
kale, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
What's the origin
yeah.
of that?
It's German.
Oh, okay. Do you know what it means?
Yeah. I don't. No.
Okay. It's a big fish that swims in the sea. No, I'm kidding.
That's how you remember how to say it, how to pronounce it.
Let's Google it right now. I want to teach you something here. Kahle,
Okay.
kale. Kale, name, meaning. Okay. Ooh, beautiful, lovely. Ah, but that's from the Greek though. Like Kalle,
Oh,
Kalle.
yeah.
So I don't know if that how reliable that Google search was, but anyway, you could probably go a bit. Okay. Oh, I got a friend in. His name's Petersburg. He's asking which 11 countries has he presented in, but I don't have a sound device, so
Yeah.
write them in the chat. I gotta write this down for him. What?
Oh, okay. Okay. So here we go. You ready?
Yeah, I'll type it in
So
as you say it.
so Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, can, um, what's the island? I'll think of it in a minute. South Africa, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ghana. How many is that? U.S. How many is that? There's one more, and it's a Caribbean island. It's a nation all by itself, and kind of wealthy. Gee, I can't think of it right now.
Okay, so
And
that's the
that's
end of that.
11.
That's the end of that
Yeah,
task. I had to like type it in for him.
yeah,
He's in a faraway country. I won't name which country he's in, but he's a young guy,
yeah.
15 years old. He's
Wow.
converted to Christianity,
Mhm.
as a young man, and he's in a
Yeah,
culture where it's not really welcome
yeah,
to be a
yeah,
Christian. So
yeah,
we'll pray
yeah.
for him. We'll pray for
Right.
him daily. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm really interested in South Africa, the culture there, and
Mm.
nice accent they have, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
They seem like nice people, but they're always troubled with what seems to be racial tensions and stuff like that. Seems silly. It
yeah.
seems silly to me, but maybe there's something more going on behind the scenes, power or
Well,
resources.
we did self-funded short-term mission trips. I would my wife and I would take some of the kids would go for a month or two at a time,
Okay.
and yeah, and this is trying to build a consulting practice, so it was a major effort both ways, both leaving the business here for a month or two as well as paying for the whole thing. But we did 10 trips over the years, so we got to know South Africa really well at that time, and we still communicate with many of the friends that we made. So you have to see South Africa through the perspective of history. The apartheid government, which was the white supremacy government, and the idea of apartheid, which was separation by virtue of your race. And there were four levels at the time we were there. So there are whites, um, Indians, because there's a lot of Indian population, coloreds, and then blacks were the four levels of society, and they were very strict levels. I mean, you couldn't necessarily even interact with one another. We had an occasion. We stayed often. We stayed on a little cottage which was right on the Indian Ocean, and while we're there, my youngest daughter uh, decided to be baptized. So I baptized her in the Indian Ocean. It's really kind of a special experience. But we invited our friends, and we didn't think anything about it. Our friends were white, black, and colored. We didn't know any Indians at that time, and we invited them for a meal afterward. It was just us inviting our friends. It was life changing for them. They said they'd never had a meal with a person of the other race in their entire life. We didn't think anything of it. It's just okay. These are our friends. Come together. It was honestly, it was huge. And again, you have to see the society in South Africa through the perspective of that kind of history, and also the whole tribal thing. There are other tribes. The two main tribes in South Africa were the Xhosas, pretty much on the east coast, and the Zulu, pretty much on the west coast, and they didn't like each other. They're constantly fighting. And so you have all this ethnic conflict as well as the racial conflict on top of it. So it was an incredibly interesting place for sure.
Next question. Why can't we all just get along?
Boy, I just look around us today in this world and think, my goodness, can't we just get along? Can't we just do we have to shoot and kill each other? Can't we just
Can you
get along?
imagine Jesus Christ up in heaven? He's watching all of this, and fully God, fully man. He's got human emotions, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So imagine the frustration, the anxiety, the disappointment, the sadness. I don't know exactly how he operates emotionally because he's so far superior to us.
yes,
But I would
right.
imagine that he's sad and disappointed when people turn away from him and his ways.
Yes, yes. I would think he would be just totally upset with the world today. Of course, he knew. He
Yeah,
knew.
yeah,
That's why he
yeah,
came.
yeah,
That's why
yeah,
he
yeah,
came
yeah.
because of the sinfulness, or to redeem us.
Will he be? Will
But
he
still,
be? Will he be less sad once the end of the world comes and the goats and the sheep are separated and we're partying up in heaven with him, hopefully, God willing. And the reprobates are in hell where they chose to go.
hmm
Will he have a change of mood where he will no longer be sad about those who turned away from him, or will that sadness always be there?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. From my earthly, worldly perspective, I think it would be a relief, to him. But who knows? He's
Yeah.
so far above me. I can't pretend to imagine
Because
what
we're taught
he's.
we're taught in the Catholic Church that we will not be sad about those who are lost. Even if you
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
spouse or a parent or a
yeah,
child who is
yeah,
lost, once we're in
yeah,
heaven, once things
yeah,
are done, we're not going to be sad. We're going to understand from God's perspective the justice, the mercy, and everything is perfect. And so,
yeah.
I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's hard for us to imagine, and a lot of atheists, they push back against this idea, like how could you be
Mm-hmm.
happy when your close
Mm-hmm.
friends are in hell? But that's what
Mm-hmm.
the church teaches. The church teaches that, so I believe
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You accept that teaching?
Oh, I haven't really thought deeply about it,
Yeah,
so I guess
yeah.
I'm gonna take a
Go with your
pass until I have a chance to
gut.
dig into it.
No comment. No comment. Okay, okay.
No, yeah, no comment. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very good. So, yeah, I'm not interested at all in business and money and worldly stuff like that. Even though you bring a
hmm
Christian perspective to it, and God bless you for that. Okay, but I'm not going to focus on that. We're going to just talk about Jesus Christ, His church.
Okay,
We may as well
okay.
talk about the institutional church that I belong to, the Catholic Church.
hmm
I would imagine that if you've written a book on the institutional church, you probably looked at the Catholic Church because that's like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
institutional church,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
there are lots of stones to lift and little critters to look at, and then you want to put the
yeah,
stone back and pretend you never saw it because it's disgusting.
yeah,
So
yeah.
corruption is a real thing. Jesus Christ was aware of that. He addressed it, and it was the religious fanatics that were
hmm
the brunt of his ire. It wasn't the
Yes,
prostitutes and the
yes,
tax
yes,
collectors. So maybe just
yes,
talk about that with a special emphasis on what you've discovered about the Catholic Church.
yeah. Well, again, I would say the Catholic Church is the ultimate expression of the institutional church system, and I use the word system because I don't, I see all the denominations, they all want to separate themselves from one another, but it's all the same system. They all operate under the same premises, as does the Catholic Church. And that is, it's a very man-made, earthly organization, and it is an institution with a man or men making decisions, creating little empires for themselves. We saw this among the missionaries in South Africa. So many of them were there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they were just creating little empires for themselves, with themselves
Mm,
as the top. Yeah,
mm,
and not all of them. I mean, there was. I mean, but more than half. So yeah, yeah. So it was an eye opener. So and the institution needs something to focus on, and so church buildings are primarily it. There is no example of a church building in the New Testament. There is no example, by the way, of a pastor or a priest. There are in the Old Testaments. There's priests, there's a high priest, and so on in the Old Testament. But in the New Testament, after the church has begun, you don't see pastors, you don't see priests, you don't see anybody who attempts to lord it over anybody else. There is a sort of equality among Christians and all that. So church buildings, pastors, denominations, I think a denomination, some person in a denomination thinks they got a little slice of the truth more than somebody else does, and therefore they want to bring people around them. And there's one Catholic Church, there's like 50,000 denominations, and it's all a matter of an earthly institution. That's why I said, when I have this group, and I have never asked anybody where they go to church. I don't care. It's totally irrelevant. I mean, the whole idea of the institutional church is irrelevant. So what? I mean, if people want to go do that, it's okay. They can do it, but I'm not going to do it. Why would I? Why would I do? It's got nothing to do with my relationship with God. You know what some man says. It's okay. Maybe he's got a view, and I appreciate that. And there's some things we can learn. But gee, I have a responsibility to create a relationship with the Lord myself. And so the church is really it's irrelevant. That's why I don't ask anybody. Who cares? I don't care.
So I'm just wondering, I'm curious because a lot of my Christian guests, I like to ask them like, you're going to balk at this question, but I like to ask them sort of like the household names that they like to listen to, you know, like the preachers that they like to, you know, listen to and stuff like that. And, you know, I have to admit that I listen to all kinds of people like
Sure.
Protestant ministers and,
Yeah.
I take everything with a grain of salt. You know, I trust God and God alone. But, you know, I'm talking to you right now. I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to get upbuilt by you, and encouraged by you. You know, and if you say things, that I don't agree with, whatever, it's whatever.
Sure.
I mean, I meet when I talk to Catholics, I don't agree with them about everything either. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's always the same thing. Like even with my wife, it's like many things we don't agree on. It's just normal.
Yeah.
It makes life spicy, right? But
Yes, right.
my point is, do you have any, or did you in the past have any favorite preachers that you used to listen to and admire?
At times, for a year or two, there'd be somebody kind of caught my eye, or somebody who I heard and had a great deal of respect for, but they just kind of all have fallen away. And I would say there is no one person that I follow. I do get recommendations from people, like, oh, you should
Okay.
hear this guy or read that book, and I
Okay.
will
Okay.
if someone recommends it,
Yeah.
but I don't go searching for it. I wait for people to recommend it, and that's sort of how I've arrived at where I am. Is just my position is I'm not going to go searching for people. If people recommend it, I'll take a look at it.
Okay, well, I recommend you become Catholic. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I've been there and done that, David, so it's okay.
Been there, done that. Yeah, got the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Is that a Dolphins? Is that a Miami Dolphins T-shirt you're wearing, or what is that?
No, it's
What's
not.
that creature on it?
But it probably is a dolphin. It's just a brand very popular here in Florida, summer wear.
Okay,
So,
because I was going to make a joke, about the parallel between sports teams fanatics and then religious group fanatics. You know what I mean? Like my team, your team.
yeah.
It's the old joke, but there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah,
Sad but true.
that's true. Yeah.
Do you follow? So you do follow Florida sports teams? Do you support them or no?
Well, so I spent 35 years in Michigan. Go Lions.
Which sport is
And
that?
Pistons.
Which
That's
sport?
football.
Okay.
So I'm a Detroit fan, football, basketball, baseball. So I follow the Lions in football, the Tigers in baseball, the Pistons in basketball.
Lions
the
and Tigers and Bears. Oh my.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, I'm not a sports guy. I just thought I'd ask because of the T-shirt there. But is it very humid in Florida? Is that a problem for the joints and everything?
It is a problem, and it's one of the issues, particularly in the summer. It's almost unbearable. People are outside till about 8 a.m, and after 7 at night, nobody goes out in the middle of the day because it could be 95 and humidity 95. It's just really unbearable. Right now, we're in the middle of winter. Like I say, it's like 55, and
I don't know what that means.
Humidity is not an issue. It's cold. It's
Okay.
cold. So the natives are walking around with gloves and parkas.
Okay.
And the Canadians are at the swimming pool. So
let me check that. Let me Google that. 55 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, 55 Fahrenheit.
13 degrees. That's nice. That's double digits.
It would be nice for you right now.
Yeah.
For us, it's miserable.
Spoiled.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of want to make sure that you get to talk about your favorite topic, which is the institutional church. So I'll try to pick questions that fall in line, but I have a bunch of other questions too, which we'll probably get to. But when it comes to corruption, like really nasty corruption, you haven't really been too forthcoming with like calling out the really really nasty stuff, which has to do usually with sex and
Yeah,
abuse of power and stuff like that.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that part of your aversion, or have you looked into that at all?
Well, not necessarily, because I see it as the human condition more than the religious condition.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Uh-huh.
and again, we saw among the many of the missionaries in South Africa, we saw what I would call a quest for power. You
Uh,
know, we never saw a sexual
yeah.
thing, but well, maybe we just never knew it. You know, but we did see, and I do think this is. Resident in any institution, whether it be Catholic or Protestant or government. You
Other,
know,
yeah.
any institution is that it's a place for people who want to gain power, and they do. You know, they strive after it, and that's too bad because
Mm,
it's a it's a negative.
yeah.
So yeah, and so in terms of corruption, I wouldn't say that had anything to do with my view on the institutional church. I see that more as a human condition as opposed to a religious
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hate politics, but I do bring it up sometimes just because it creeps into my world. Just
Mm,
can't help it,
mm,
like
mhm,
the whole left right split.
mm,
The left hates the right hates the left, and
mm,
it's a
mhm.
lot of hatred online with the internet
Yes.
community. Um, I'm just wondering what you think about um, because the real question is how can we get along? That's the real
Yes.
question. There's a
Yes.
heavily religious component to that, but there's also the pragmatic sort of concerns about how much taxation and where do you spend the tax money. Like it's just like
Mhm,
basic stuff, right? So do you have a particular dog in the fight? Like are you a libertarian or a communist or
no.
a capitalist, or have you thought about political philosophy at all to any depth?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say it's I don't wave the flag so much, but yeah, I'm a capitalist. But I've lived my life in business, and my I've consulted and spoken to businesses. That's what I do,
Yeah.
for a living. Is I help businesses grow. So that would put me directly in the realm of being a capitalist. But I don't preach capitalism. I just work within it.
Yeah.
I'm very independent in terms of political affiliations. I've never
Okay.
been a member of any party. I've just always been independent. I am of a conservative nature, just by how I was raised and so on. So I tend to see issues from a conservative perspective as opposed to a liberal perspective. But I'm open enough that I want to talk to anybody, and I'm uh, I don't like Biden or Trump. So, you know,
Equal
so there you go.
opportunity hater. Okay, I got you. I
Yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
But what do you
yeah.
think about Trudeau? That's the question. What do you think about Justin
Well,
Trudeau?
I don't follow him. So I have very little personal, but a couple of our friends who are Canadian are of the perspective that he's probably the worst thing that's happened to Canada ever.
Yeah,
And so okay, that's second and third hand, but
yeah.
that's all I know about him, and I
That's
really
the
don't
consensus
really
among
pay
everyone
much
that I
attention.
know. But
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I mean, I try not to dwell on it, and I certainly don't want to fall into Satan's trap of division, where I hate everybody, that doesn't think
Hmm.
exactly like that as I think,
Hmm.
because identity politics is so transparent to me with what's the current thing and which side of this
Hmm.
issue am I on. Like,
Yeah.
there's a real pack groupthink mentality. It's like, oh, I'm on this side of the issue. Why? Well, it's because that's what my group is telling me.
Yes,
You know what I
that's
mean?
right. That's right.
It's
Yep, that's right.
unbelievable. It's really
Yeah.
unbelievable. I got a delicate question that I like to ask a lot of my Christian friends. I'm just going to throw
Hmm.
it out there and see what you say, okay?
Okay.
You may not have anything to say, but it has to do with the whatever you want to call it, colonization or whatever, of
Hmm.
the Americas, okay? I
Yep.
don't know if
Hmm.
you looked into it, but it's a mix of good and bad. Like the church did some
Hmm.
good, and the state
Hmm.
did some bad. And I mean,
Hmm.
I'm kind of saying that it was the church was good and the state was bad, because that's what I've been
Hmm.
reading, a Catholic perspective, and that's what it says, okay? But that
Hmm.
might not be the case, and it's probably not that clear cut, okay? I'm not that naive that I actually believe that. But God is good, and man is selfish and
Hmm.
has a lust for power. So I'm just wondering, it's pretty obvious the people that were here, they're primitive compared to what we have
Mhm,
going on now. But it
mhm.
seems like they got a raw deal. They were lied to and manipulated and pushed
Sure.
around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Like, how do you sleep at night? And you know, what does it say about human nature and about politics and about religion? And
Yeah.
what do you think about
Yeah.
all that?
Yeah. Well, it says human nature is what human nature is. It's people who are in power want more of it, and they want to express it. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at the history, but you could use that as a sort of the formula. I don't feel personally responsible.
White guilt.
Yeah, no, none of that. I don't. And that stuff that was done primarily, I think, because that was the culture at the time, their mini culture, the culture they were operating out of, uh, gave them permission to do what they did, and that's not. I'm not blessing it by any means. I'm not approving of it, but I'm just saying that's probably a way to understand it. So yeah, the indigenous people got a raw deal. Absolutely, for sure. Um, but I don't feel responsible, so
Yeah. But when it
yeah.
comes to the connected question is ecology, because there's the myth of the noble savage. They were in touch with nature and lived with a low carbon footprint, and now we've got iPhones and everyone's got a car, and
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
disaster. And the Western world, the white man's world, is like panicking. We're reaching the tipping point, and
Mhm.
end of the world. And we've been saying that for decades. Okay, so it's like a bit of crying wolf. It seems like to me, and people are still buying waterfront properties, and it's still getting insurance.
Sure.
It's like
Yes.
no problem getting insured. So I mean, it seems like it doesn't really make sense. But when it comes to ecology, do you really buy into the white man, Western European model of growth and development and industry and technology? Do you buy that, or do you feel like it is poisoning the water and the air and the fish and everything?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say yes and yes. So yeah, I sort of do buy into it because I see that as sort of the progression in history, and so yeah, we were part of that. On the other hand, I do believe that, particularly as Christians, we have a responsibility to protect the environment. This is the globe. This is creation that God has put in our hands, and so we have responsibility to
Steward
protect
it,
it and
steward it, and protect it.
steward it. Yeah, absolutely. So that's not a conservative perspective, but it's mine. That's why I say I'm sort of independent. I have my own ideas. Let me tell a story um, that I think illustrates one part of this issue. So when we were in South Africa, one of the early times we were in Soweto, which is the big African township on outside of Johannesburg. And when we were there, the children were on strike from going to school. They were refusing to go to school. Yeah, that's not the punchline. Here's the punchline. You know why they were striking? Because they refused to be graded as individuals.
Oh,
Yep. Their position is the whole class passes or the whole class fails.
oh, oh.
Who are you, teacher, to separate one of us from another? And I look at
Wow,
that and think, wow, just let that sink in a minute.
wow.
That is a worldview that in this particular case, I often have said it's not a wonder that we have problems communicating. It's a wonder we can communicate at all, because that's so far distant
Mhm.
from the Western culture. One man, one vote. No, no, it's not.
Wow.
So that tribal mentality has the effect of holding people down. Because if
Oh,
you if you rise up, you'll be ostracized and maybe even killed.
oh,
You know,
oh.
because who are you to separate yourself from the group? So you
Wow.
say, well, you look at that and think, that kind of thing certainly does help explain, a lot of the difficulties between the races. And it's not necessarily a issue of skin color. It is an issue of culture and mindset. And That's that, and those issues are deep. They run so deep. One of the uh, one of the folks we ran into in Africa was a fellow in Johannesburg who had. I mean, he was a missionary who really was. I mean, he had a house that he had people stay in and so on. I mean, he really was doing a great job. He was a PhD, and he had created a course for the African miners, and he called it International Business Culture. So if you're gonna be anything in this world, you're gonna try to achieve, you have to understand the business culture. And it was a class for African miners, And he showed me the material, and the first lesson was sentient and insentient. So a rock doesn't feel, and and he said people would get up and walk out.
Insulted, yeah. They're like, this is
It,
absurd.
insult,
This is
it's
absurd.
insulted their mindset.
Wow.
Yeah, and you think, wow. So, wow.
That's what we're dealing with. Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just some these cultural ideas that are so deeply embedded that
I don't know if it's happened to you, but I've been interviewing people since 2016 on this podcast part time. I work full time in construction, but I've met all kinds of people. But the ones that are most disturbing are the ones who claim to be Christian, but then you talk to them just normal talk, questions, answers,
Mhm,
question,
mhm.
answers, and then you discover something very unorthodox, like belief in reincarnation. And I met a lot of people, Christians, who believe in
Yeah.
reincarnation.
Interesting.
No offense to you if you do, by the
Yeah.
way.
No, I don't, but that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just realized, oh shit, you might be one of the ones. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
I figured you're probably not. But anyway, it just like, and then I just have to rethink the whole conversation like I had with this Christian. It's like, that's just like, I'm tripping now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to say, what to do. I'm like
Yeah.
reeling from that because that's not Christian. I'm sorry. So I have to be very diplomatic and try to like understand how and why. But it's pretty clear, like we have one life and then the judgment. Isn't that the biblical
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, it is.
antidote to
Yeah.
that? Like, I mean, come
Yeah.
on, it's not a sophisticated teaching here. It's like we have one life.
Right.
But so how would you deal with Christians who are sort of unorthodox, and especially if it's not obvious, like if you just happen to discover it years after you've built a friendship with this supposed Christian, like how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
How would I deal with it?
have you have
First of all,
you encountered that?
I don't think I ever have. Well,
Ah,
let me say this. So not the issue of reincarnation, but certainly other issues. And one of them is, for example, the whole apartheid thing in South Africa. That was I mean the Christian church was promoted. I mean, was provided rationale and so on, and it was they were very much a part of that. So how can you reconcile those two things? How can you reconcile treating people so differently because of the color of their skin or their culture? And at the same time claim to be a Christian? How can you do that? And the conversations never went anywhere. I mean, they were dismissed immediately. Nobody wants to talk about it.
uh,
You couldn't have a conversation. And I guess the same thing. I found the same thing to be true with the institutional church. So that book, the institution, is the institutional church system, really the church, um, was put in the hands of a number of pastors. And you know what the most common response is? No, not the most common. I mean, the overwhelming response: nothing. They're not going to talk about it. Just nope. I'm not going to talk about it.
would you reach
Wow.
out would you reach out and try to talk about it?
I tried to engage them, and they they won't talk. They just no. I'm not. Have a good day. Off I go.
uh, uh,
And so I think there is just from my anecdotal experience. It's not research based or anything like that. Just anecdotally, the need to hold on to beliefs that have been in your system for a long time is just incredibly strong. I mean, it's stronger than almost anything else. The need to hold on to beliefs that you've lived with for a while, for a long time. It's
But I think this is why it's only with an unforeseen catastrophic event, sort
yes,
of breaking point, lowest point where people are able to pick up the pieces and say, well, since I'm picking up the pieces, maybe I can rearrange them, and I don't have to be like I was, because everything's
yeah,
shattered and everything's broken, and the
yeah,
rug's been torn out from underneath me. That's often the case. That's the only time when people become flexible again, was when everything goes
yeah,
to
yeah,
hell, right?
yeah. I think you're right. I've often observed that if people are going to change those core, those core worldview kind of beliefs, it is either an intense emotional event like you're describing, or I think there is another possibility, and that is repetition. I see
Okay.
people brainwashed,
Uh,
in concentration camps, things like that.
yeah.
And so I think continuous repetition will do it, as well as a intense emotional event where it just shakes everything up, and you come out of that questioning everything, and that's a basis then for a new set of beliefs.
Yeah, there's another we're gonna have to wrap it up soon, but there's another very heavy topic which is related, I think, which is Israel, and I want you to couch this in terms of New Testament, and in particular the book of Romans,
Hmm.
chapters 9
Hmm.
through 11 or 12, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Israel, there's a partial hardening come upon them, but they're going to come back in, and the the formation of the state of Israel in the 40s, whatever that was.
Hmm.
I view that as a political thing, a human thing, not something that God ordained as part of salvation history. But of course, He permits it and He's working with it. And
Hmm.
nothing happens without God's permission, obviously, without God's will. So, I'm anti-Zionist, I'm anti-state of Israel, but I'm open-minded. I mean, I might be wrong about it. I might be wrong about it, but I just sort of, I don't like the way things are playing out there. Like I believe Islam's a false religion, and but I also believe that the Judaism of today, they missed the boat with their own Messiah. So it's like I'm not pro-Muslim or pro Judaism. I'm pro Judaism before the Messiah came, but once the Messiah came, now I'm pro-Christian. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
that's where I'm at with the whole Israel-Palestine thing. And the solution for me for world peace is Jesus Christ. But
Yes.
I don't think it's going to happen like just because of my feeble little prayers tonight. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow
Mm.
morning. But what's your take on the political state of Israel? Was that a good thing? Did God ordain that? Is this part of the plan, or is God just allowing it to happen? It's a sort of demonic antichrist move that's happening.
No, I think I'd be hard pressed to annotate it in terms of scripture and verse, but I do think that the modern day state of Israel is a God thing.
Yeah.
I think it's part. I think it's part of the big plan, and I think that as we move on, it's sort of a precursor to Armageddon.
Uh,
The final thing. I
uh,
just see that coming.
uh,
Through everything that's happening there. So, and that's another example of we have these two groups of people who are so deeply invested in their cultural beliefs that I mean, they just can't think of anything else. They can't imagine anything else, and so they just kill each other. Like, wow. So yeah. So I think the current state of affairs is very unfortunate. I do think Israel has a right to their own existence,
uh,
and I think that a lot of the opposition is opposition to more than just the state of Israel. We're just reading that Hamas is now planning terrorist events around the world and so on. And yeah,
right.
so that was just came up recently,
Uh,
and so it's unfortunate, but the only solution is a change in people's hearts, and that means the only solution is Jesus Christ. And so But man, it's tough.
It's deep stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I interviewed a Jewish gentleman last night, and he's what they call a modern Orthodox. Modern Orthodox are trying to sort of be
Okay.
worldly and you look
Mm-hmm.
at science and look at everything
Mm-hmm.
like reality according to the modern mindset, which I think is deeply flawed. But anyway, he is embracing it as a Jew. And Judaism is more worldly anyway than Christianity, generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
since the Messiah came.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I asked him this question, and I asked him about loving your enemies, and he said, "No, I hate my enemies. I hate my enemies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate
See,
my
so there
enemies."
you go. There you go. Like,
I was shocked. I was shocked by that. It's so intuitive to me. I was born and raised Christian. Okay, I left the faith for 25 years and became an atheist.
mm-hmm.
But I was still Christian. I was still culturally Christian when I was an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've never hated my enemies. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I might have been a bad person. I might have made bad, selfish choices, but I've always been a Christian. I'm baptized. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it's so foreign to me. I can't even imagine
Mm-hmm.
that non-Christian attitude about hating your enemy. It's like mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
But you've seen it. You've probably seen it in your travels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, yeah. And again, it's one of those beliefs we were talking about, so deeply embedded that the idea of even questioning it is not anything they've even thought about. And I think there's a greater thing. Like, I'm I believe people are afraid to think, and so they go in with the herd, whatever their group, without thinking about it, and they react emotionally because they don't have to think, and their group does this, so nobody has to think. And there is a hesitancy to think about things, and I think it's honestly, that could be the ultimate issue in terms of the survival of society, is what we've stopped thinking. We just react and are driven by the herd mentality, and it's just really unfortunate. Yeah.
Scary stuff. One
Yeah.
of the questions I ask my Protestant friends is about once saved, always saved, the assurance
Mhm,
of salvation,
mhm,
and
mhm, mhm,
my Protestant friends say, "Well, I'm righteous because I have the righteousness of Christ, and
mhm,
imputed to me, and you should do the
mhm,
same. What are you doing? Why, if you're Christian, like
mhm,
they say to me,
mhm,
if you're Christian, what are you doing? Like, why don't
mhm,
you take on the righteousness of Christ?" And it's like, well,
mhm.
because that's not the Catholic way. The Catholic way is I was saved, I'm being saved now, and I will be saved, and it's an ongoing thing. Like there's grace, but I have to cooperate with the
Mhm.
grace with my free will. I have to freely
Yes.
cooperate with the
Yeah.
grace. So the whole
Yeah.
once saved, always saved thing, I think it's a big misunderstanding in terms of like I don't think we're that separate, that different really. But a lot of arguments arise where we don't really understand the other person's perspective. And I like to approach the Protestant position, and that's not the only
Mhm.
Protestant position, but it's one
Yeah.
Protestant
Right.
position that I've run into.
Yeah.
I like to sort of bridge the gap by saying, well, of course, I'm not despairing of my own salvation. Like I do have hope,
Yes.
but the hope is hope precisely because I don't have it in hand. St. Paul says, if you have it in hand,
Mm.
it's not hope. We only
Yeah.
hope for things we don't yet have. So,
Yeah.
what's your perspective as a quote unquote Protestant on once saved,
Yeah.
always saved?
Yeah. So you can make a biblical argument, a very sound, rational biblical argument for either side of that. That's the problem. Is that, I mean, you can cite scriptures for either
Yeah,
side. So here's my take on it. Uh, I think you can lose your salvation by your
yeah, yeah,
actions,
yeah,
but no one else can take it from
yeah,
you.
yeah,
The only way you're going to lose it is if you
yeah,
choose to, and you can,
yeah.
you can, if you choose to. So, yeah, are you saved? Yes, as far as anybody else is concerned, nobody else can take it. Satan can't rob you of it. It's yours. However, you can give it up,
Yeah.
by intentionality and so on. So that's where I am.
Is that a typical view that you've run into in your
I don't
circles?
know. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Do you so you don't feel like you're an outlier with an odd point of view on that? It's just kind of like natural for you and probably the default position, or because
I,
that's my
I
position. That is my
yeah,
exactly my position.
Oh, well, it's because we have the same name.
That's the Dave. That's the Dave position.
Dave
Okay,
thing. Yeah.
okay. It's a Dave thing. It's another Dave
Yeah.
thing. Okay, I
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really appreciate meeting you. We're gonna have to wrap it up here, but I'd like to give my listener, or not my listener, my guest, the final sort of thought, something positive, something hopeful. Because as we've been discussing, there's a lot of dark stuff, and Satan's at work, and he wants your soul, he wants my soul, but God wants it more, so we have to give it to God. So,
Yeah.
what would be a final thought? And bear in mind, please, my listeners. I don't have that many, but they're very diverse: atheist, agnostic,
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
Jewish, Muslim,
mhm.
Christian. So, what would you say?
Don't worry about the church. Don't worry about church. Just don't worry about it. It's irrelevant. What you need to focus on is relationship with God, and that is something that exists regardless, or instead of, or in place of any church thing. So when you get together with people, they talk about church. Want to know where you go to church, and so on. It's all irrelevant. Who cares? The only thing that matters is your relationship with God. That's it. So focus on that, and don't spend time even thinking about it. Like I say, I don't even ask them. Who cares? It's all about your relationship with God. That's what you should work on. That's what you should focus on.
Very good. Thank you for sharing and sharing your perspective. And in future, in a few months' time or whatever, if you want to come back and chat, reach out to me by email, or we'll see each other on
Yeah,
Podmatch. Have you
yeah.
enjoyed your experience on Podmatch? Have you met a lot of interesting hosts? Are they a lot of Christians, more business money type of hosts, or what kind
No,
of
it's more
podcasts?
business, because what I do for a living, I'm a consultant and an author and a
Yeah,
public speaker and so on.
yeah.
So that's what I do. That's what I do for a living. Although I'm trying to jettison that as time goes on.
Right.
So, but most of the podcast shows, like I'm a sales guy, I talk about systems and
Oh,
sales systems and how to grow a business and so on. So that's a topic. I mean, that's what most people are interested in, and so I would say 90% of my podcast interviews are sales ish, something
oh,
business
oh.
ish. Yeah. Mhm.
Wow. So is it a fun break to talk about
It
Christ?
is. It is. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
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 Well, that's
Yeah.
fun. Did you know?
Yeah.
I guess you figured out that that's pretty much what we're going to talk about. Like you pretty much knew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
And I'd love to do it again.
Yeah. Okay. So reach out in a few months' time. I'm booked till like April, but reach
Okay.
out and we'll do it again, or just book it. Just book. Go ahead and
Yeah.
book it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think I probably will.
All right. Great to
Okay.
meet you, Dave. And please pray for me and mine, and you and yours are my prayers. Okay.
Sure. Very
God
good.
bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Take good care.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Yep.